Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a little how to paint eyes tutorial. So this is specifically done with oils, but it definitely applies to other mediums as well. So this particular piece I did on a page from an old dictionary that I lightly brushed with some strong tea to give it some more color, and then I adhered it to some watercolor paper. And then I gave a quick sketch with a charcoal pencil to block in the rough shape of the eye, and then I got painting. So I worked entirely with oils for this piece, but like I said earlier, you can easily do this with acrylics as well, and to some extent with other mediums. So eyes are a tricky subject to paint. Studying from reference is one of the best ways to improve painting them, and each animal has a slightly different eye structure, humans included. This is one of the styles that I paint eyes in, and it's probably the one that I most frequently use. So generally the steps are, number 1, blocking in the main tones of the eye. Then you darken it slightly where it disappears into the socket, and then pop in a couple rough textures and some different tones into the iris, kind of working wet into wet to have everything sort of blended together and giving yourselves a nice solid foundation. Step 2, when that first layer is dry, then I usually go in and work more details into the iris. So using a couple different tones, darks and lights, paying close attention to your references, and kind of really paying attention to where that light falls and how that light actually plays with the texture of the iris itself. So once that step is dry, we jump into step 3. So usually what I do is I will create a dark glaze at this point. Very rarely do I actually use black, so what I do is I use a little bit of glazing medium, but what I do is I mix a tiny bit of pigment, so usually I'm taking a bit of purple and brown, in this piece in particular, and mixing a nice glaze. So you don't want it to be super pale, you definitely want it to have a bit of darkening power, but you still want it to be very transparent. So once you got your glaze mixed, then I add that cast shadow that usually covers anywhere from 1/3 to half of the eye. Different eyes have different structures. Some appear more opaque, where some look a lot more crystalline. So I'm kind of going for a more crystalline look here, which is why I'm actually having that nice strong cast shadow. And then I usually work a bit more pigmented paint into the deeper shadows, kind of working it into that area where the wet glaze is, make it a bit darker. And then when the glaze layer is dry, we get to do one of the most fun steps, and that is adding the highlight. So I always wait until the glaze is dry, and then I create another transparent pale blue glaze, and then give kind of a broader wash of highlight in the direction of the light. And then what I do afterwards is I create some stronger tones, so typically adding a bit more of that opaque white, and then usually finishing off with a couple pinpoints of white if the environment calls for it. So if it's in a more dim environment, you probably aren't going to have a very strong highlight. You're probably going to have something a lot more subtle. But if, for instance, your subject is outside with a beautiful sun, it's nice and sunny outside, little clouds, there's probably going to be a nice sharp white highlight at some point. So those are the generalized steps that I usually follow when painting eyes. I prefer to have bright, rich, crystalline eyes, so I tend to use more saturated tones and avoid using black if at all possible. Black can make things look very flat, and it's very easy to get around using black by using dark purples, blues, and browns, and that will help you to create a much more dynamic piece. I always use glazes, so I mix a bunch of different ones to add different tones and different shadow areas. So make sure you're paying close attention to how the light bounces in the eye. There's absolutely no shame in using references. In fact, it's highly encouraged. So make sure you're looking at lots of different photographs, especially if you're painting a specific animal. It really helps to look at a bunch of different images that show the light falling from different angles so you can actually see how that light plays around inside the eye. So hopefully you guys found this of some interest, and hopefully at least somebody out there found it helpful. So this is kind of a general, step by step that I usually follow when I'm painting eyes. So by no means does it only apply to this bright orange eye that I painted that belongs to a great horned owl, specifically is what I was aiming for. It can definitely be applied to any critters out there, including humans. Hopefully you guys had some fun with this, and thank you guys so much for watching!